And I made Connor, my 8-year-old, sit and finish it with me. I'm like, no, we bought this crap. We're in it together.
Your son's just like, I want to watch Cars 2 for the 30th time. No! Hello and welcome back to the Behind the Screen podcast, which you can now listen to on Spotify. I am joined here today by my good friend Connor. How are you, buddy?
Hey, I'm great, Gorian. Good to be here and sitting down after we've just seen Tenet.
And you couldn't see my face behind the mask during the movie, but my jaw was dropped for about half the movie. And we will say right off the bat, we're not going to spoil Tenet for you.
Not that I could spoil it if I wanted to, because I'm not sure exactly what I saw.
You may need a encyclopedia explaining the movie afterwards.
Or a physics degree.
You might need a physics degree to watch Tenet. But we're not going to talk about Tenet. Instead, we're going to talk about going to the movies. You and I went to go see 2 movies at the theaters this weekend because theaters are starting to open up again and we're trying to get that theater experience back. And later on in the episode, I'll be talking to Adam Does Movies, a movie critic with a sense of humor.
I'm Adam. I've been on YouTube, I guess maybe 8 or 9 years off and on, kind of testing the waters on different videos, but really my main focus was movie feuds, which was pitting 2 or more films head to head. I thought it was just kind of a unique, interesting way to kind of slyly review movies without people even knowing I was doing that.
And we're going to talk to him about what we enjoy about going to the movie theaters, but also what we enjoy about staying at home and watching the movies. I mean, there's so many things happening right now that are changing how we watch our favorite movies that we just have to talk about it a little bit. All film people do, we love to argue about everything. And today we're going to be doing a little bit of arguing about whether or not it's worth going to the theater. And with the struggle to release Tenet this entire year, with it finally coming out, I went to the theater a couple times this weekend, and you were saying how you're strictly not going to the theater. So let's just start off with that and talk about what do you miss about the theater experience? Because it kind of seems like you're not going back until it's a bit more secure.
Well, first off, beautiful segue. I loved how you did that. Beautiful transition.
Thank you.
Movies have always been an escapism for me. I played sports and stuff when I was younger, but my real hobby and my real passion was going to the theater. And I just don't want to do it when I have to wear a mask and feel like I'm still kind of part of this miserable, society that we're in right now. I want to go to the movie and be fully invested, drink a Coke, eat some popcorn, and just be a sloth for 2 hours.
Yeah, I'm kind of a purist when it comes to seeing movies in the theaters. I think it's so much more immersive, such a better experience. But I think after these last couple movies we've seen in theaters, it's obviously going to be a different theater experience. I mean, what I loved most about seeing a movie in the theater is being surrounded by people and kind of like packed into a room because there's so many different emotions and interpretations going on all around you. It's this big electrical, like, mass of people. Whereas now, obviously, that's not possible, and it's not what was reflected in the past 2 screenings we went to.
And what's interesting, too, is we'll just get right into it and talk about the things that we enjoy going to the theaters for. Because, again, we did see Bill and Ted, and we saw Tenet, 2 very different films. And, again, 2 very different viewing methods. I mean, we'll start with Bill and Ted. That's a pure comedy we saw. And comedies are best in theaters when the crowd is packed.
Yeah, no, you get, like, that rolling laughter.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I'd say there was like maybe like 15 people in the theater with us.
We were starting most of the laughs. I was laughing, people behind us were laughing, but you do notice the lack of people when there's only 30, 20 people in an auditorium.
There was just a rogue child wandering around.
Yeah, that's so true. And that same child was like asking like plot points and stuff. I mean, again, it really reminded us we were at the theater because all you heard was, "Mommy, why are Bill and Ted
It's a pretty laissez-faire atmosphere when there's like people are used to being at home and also there's nobody there.
Yeah.
I've had a chip on my shoulder about movie theaters for the last 2 or 3 years.
Oh.
It's not the theaters themselves, because I still love going. It's my favorite thing to do, but I can't stand the people anymore. Every time I go, 10% of me is tracking the audience to see what Jag is going to be on his phone. And every time I have that crap, like a 45-year-old dude who rode solo to the film brings up Facebook and he's scrolling it on max brightness for 20 minutes of the film. And I kid you not, I am the one that always has to go over to them and be like, hey, can you get off your phone, man?
Yeah.
It's so uncomfortable and awkward.
Don't be a Tommy Texter. Let everyone enjoy the show.
And then we also just came back from seeing Tenet, and we did see that in IMAX. I'm used to seeing my movies back when they were all open at like super small independent chains. I mean, like,
Yeah,
some of
you
the
love like the small underground, like rainbow cinema.
It's basically a rich person's living room. Those are the cinemas I go to. Like, the screen's like 30 feet long. You can barely fit like 50 people in there.
I like when you can smell the spilled butter on the seats.
Versus
That's my vibe.
this IMAX theater we went to, I think it's one of the biggest in Canada. And when I walked in there, I just started laughing at the sheer size of the screen. I mean, you even made a joke that like there's a pit at the bottom of the screen that if you fall into, you can't get out
You're
of.
gonna be falling for a while.
Yeah, and again, like, the movie sounded so good. It looked so good. I forgot that a big part of movies is like the actual image and the visuals. I mean, I've gotten so used to just watching movies glazed over. When we went to go see Bill and Ted, you could really tell that that was a movie that kind of struggled once COVID hit, and you could tell that VOD and movie theaters were kind of the same experience in terms of it wasn't a big spectacle movie. Tenet was supposed to save, cinemas, right?
Yeah, it's still supposed to save cinema, and I think like the early numbers are looking really good for it, which is nice and hopeful, because I know they were kind of maybe going to keep the numbers under wraps if it wasn't doing so well. So it's good to see that it's performing.
Even checking local listings, it's sold out for basically every single screening for the next week and a half.
They reopened like my local Cineplex down the street for me, and it's like basically just playing Tenet.
It's a Tenet theater now. All they do is play Tenet.
And it's like even Gorian and I like walk into the theater, and it's just like, oh, is that our theater? Nope. Is that our theater? No. And it's like 10 different versions of Ultra AVX, regular,
Well,
like
let's talk about
70.
that, because we saw this in IMAX, and I do think that this movie would not be worth seeing if it wasn't in IMAX. And again, we were talking about there's 4D, there's moving seats, there's little sprays, we were joking that we saw a theater that was playing like 270-degree angle screens on either side. There's AVX, there's Ultra AVX. It can be a little daunting when it's a film like this that you're like, well, what am I supposed to watch? Like, isn't it easier just to turn on the TV at home and watch it now versus...
No, I'm watching something either regular projection or IMAX, or I think I saw Ready Player One in IMAX 3D at that same theater. And yeah, I don't know if the spectacle would have been as worth it if we just watched it regular ticket price, regular projection. And I wasn't sure if Tenet was going to be full frame IMAX the whole time, and it ended up not being. The action sequences were kind of full frame. I'm not sure what the aspect ratio is, but it's almost like 4:3.
I was gonna say it looked like almost like a square when we were watching it.
Yeah, whereas a
lot of the other stuff was kind of like more widescreen, traditional, and then they do cut back and forth, and you'll see the aspect ratios jumping during it.
Yeah, which is it wasn't super distracting. I remember like seeing what was it, The Dark Knight Rises back in the day, and like the crazy crop changes in that on IMAX were super distracting, whereas we didn't have the same problem. Yeah,
and I think with Tenet, you and I both didn't enjoy the movie as much as we thought we would, but it's the fact that Christopher Nolan understands cinema scale and like sense of size. I mean, so many of his like action sequences are just so great in those big theaters that I just can't imagine. Even watching Dark Knight a couple weeks ago in another theater, it didn't hold a candle in comparison to Tenet. But then it's also one of those things where every movie can't be Tenet that's in theaters. I mean, surely there's going to be like a drama that's released that you're kind of struggling with to decide, do I see it in theaters or not?
I don't think, for me, it's more about the isolation of being in a theater and being around other people and seeing that image larger than life without those distractions.
Because you and I love going to movies by ourselves, and there's nothing better than like going to like a sold out horror movie or comedy by yourself, and it's like a single experience, but like you're there as a unit, man. Like people are screaming, people are hollering. It's a great time. And I do think that like going back to the theaters now, I think it's one of those things where if you want to appreciate the spectacle, if you want to have that, a bit more room to relax in, because again, we were talking about this earlier, but when these theaters are, filled at 30% capacity, it kind of almost brings the energy down.
Yeah.
Because you're like, what is this, like a Sunday afternoon screaming? It's like, it's a sold out theater, but like, it doesn't feel like a sold out theater, which is just that feeling of everyone all together experiencing every twist.
You really feel the silence because it's such a huge space and there's so few people in there right now. It almost feels more solitary seeing something in a theater right now than it does like when I'm watching it in headphones at home, because it's like such a more intimate space.
Yeah, someone sneezes and you're like, hey, I'm trying to watch Tenet over here.
Yeah, but
reverse that sneeze inside, please.
Well, yeah, it's a little bit of everything there. I look, kind of like what you said with Avengers Endgame, that experience of the fans all cheering,
people standing on their seats and stuff. It's pandemonium, and I love it.
I mean, I can think of a dozen or so experience I've had like that going to the theaters, whether it's the first time seeing Jurassic Park with my mom when I was 8 or 9, or going to Batman Returns and having a person try to sneak in through the side door and the entire audience just viciously going savage on him. It's just, you have that community sense with these films, and everybody, you've shut your brain off from the outside world for a couple hours and you're just all in this together, experiencing, the movie how it was meant to be seen. And I can't imagine I'm going to have that experience going with a mask on and only like a couple of idiots in the theater, 2 of which will be on their phones. And it's like, what am I doing here? This is miserable.
And also, we will say that leading up to Tenet releasing in theaters, it was supposed to save cinema, but they didn't really understand how to market it. And we were talking about how they were playing Christopher Nolan's older films in Fortnite as a sort of hype event where you could log into Fortnite, walk up to a digital screen, and watch the movie within this thing.
And it's like, maybe I'm the one that's disconnected from the youth today, but it's like, it just seems like they have no idea how to market to a younger generation. And so they're just like, oh, well, the kids love Fortnite. Let's just play it in Fortnite. That'll really get people out to the theaters. So.
Yeah. Another thing that I do love about cinemas and going to cinemas is the independent chains. I mean, they curate films so well, and they'll often do things where they'll bring a band, or they'll bring someone to talk about a movie, or they'll do a raffle and a giveaway, and you genuinely feel like it's not just going to a movie, even though it's like a $12 ticket. It's an experience of, oh, we got to watch Friday the 13th together on Friday the 13th at the movie theaters, versus... I think one of the things that is kind of lame about chains is like Cineplex. It feels pretty stale, pretty cold. And especially now that it's so empty, you find the lack of humanity when you're watching these movies. It's all just so sterile. It's all just so clean that I'm not getting that little bit of experience that the theater would give with a full audience, No,
to be honest, I much preferred our experience seeing Bill and Ted
100%.
at a small indie theater.
Yeah.
It's like the oldest continuously operating theater in Toronto. I think it's like 1912 or something it opened. And it's like, but it's so clean. The staff is so friendly.
So good.
It's just like the atmosphere really adds to the whole experience of it.
You can run into that theater in 20 seconds from the front versus going to a Scotiabank. It takes you like 9 minutes to get to your seats from like opening the door of the theater. They're too big.
It's a maze, and it's just like... Especially today, it was freezing in there.
They are just blasting the AC as much as... Honestly, it's a 2.5 hour movie. Bring a blanket to Tenet.
Yeah.
Funny enough, though, so we're talking about movies that probably aren't worth seeing at theaters, and we're seeing more and more companies putting streaming videos and movies right on demand. I mean, we saw earlier this year with Trolls World Tour going to VOD. You have kids. Did you experience the rental of Trolls World Tour when that happened?
I did not watch Trolls World Tour, and my, normally we would, like, if that would have gone to theaters, ironically, we probably would have gone. Yeah, I don't know why, but we weren't feeling World Tour. And but what we did do, which this came out after, I guess, but there was the Scoob situation. I don't know if
that was a couple of weeks ago.
I thought they gave a better option here, which was you could rent it for $25 or buy it for $30.
Oh, and I'm kids, you're definitely gonna buy
with
it.
Kids, I'm like, I mean, $5 more to own Scooby-Doo. Like we kind of like the lame live action Scooby-Doo movies.
They're great.
There was the newer animated show was actually really well done. So we bought it and we all absolutely hated the movie. My daughter left like 45 minutes in. My wife was like playing some stupid Scrabble game on her tablet.
Oh, no.
And I made Connor, my son, my 8-year-old, sit and finish it with me. I'm like, no, we bought this crap. We're in it together.
Your son's just like, I want to watch Cars 2 for the 30th time. No.
My niece and nephew love that movie.
Really?
They're just like already quoting it, and I'm like, where have you picked up these phrases?
By quoting it, you mean just like pop culture lyrics from like hip hop songs?
I'm like, where did you learn this like really witty, like precocious remark? And I'm like, oh, probably from Trolls World Tour.
And what ended up happening with Trolls World Tour is that AMC, the theater chain, wanted to ban all Universal's movies from their theater because they had an agreement that they were not allowed to put Universal films on VOD before they play in theaters.
Oh.
But because theaters weren't going to be open for 5 or 6 months, they decided to just put it on their own. Universal had every right to do it. It was kind of just a gentleman's agreement with AMC.
Right.
And when they reach an understanding now, which basically means that AMC understands how much trouble they're in, and they should be working with Universal, not the other way around, because this World Tour movie did gangbusters, dude. This was that movie that cemented the fact that you could probably start renting brand new theater movies at home.
I think it's different in the sense that it is a kids movie, and so I don't think like parents are taking their children out to see every new children's specific movie.
Yeah.
Like the big ones, sure, like the Toy Stories and stuff like that, but I think if they have the options just to stay home, like the kids don't care.
Yeah,
they'd rather be at home instead of confined to a seat for an hour and a half.
Plus, every kid likes to watch every movie like a million times. You get a 24-hour viewing window. Like, would we have been better off renting Tenet and then watching it maybe again afterwards than seeing it at the theaters?
I need to watch it like 10 more times, and so that's going to be a financial commitment.
With as many subtitles as you can possibly give us.
Yeah, lots of mumbling going on.
And recently what we have is Mulan is coming to streaming, but they're taking it a little bit differently. And what they're doing is they're releasing Mulan on Disney Plus that you have to pay $10 a month for. But then the Mulan rental will be $30 on top of that additional charge. And it's kind of testing how much people are willing to pay for a movie in addition to a service. That's the other thing that people were very upset about. The fact that you have to rent the service, but then also pay another rental on top of that, instead of just giving me the option to just rent Mulan. I don't need to watch every episode of The Simpsons on Disney Plus in the wrong aspect ratio, you know?
Yeah, I think adding a charge on top of a service you're already paying for, maybe people aren't ready for that right now. Will it become more common? Yes, I definitely think so.
It's like if you had a membership at a theater and like only if you had the membership you could see the movie. Doesn't that kind of seem a little icky?
Yeah. They're just like trying to squeeze as much money out of people as possible.
Yeah.
Like, do I think it's right that they're charging more for a service that you already pay for? No, I think it's terrible. But
I also think it's like a double slap that it's like a freaking Disney cartoon made to a movie, like their reboot.
Yeah,
it's a
maybe
Disney
if you're that stoked to see Mulan, you deserve it.
They know that in their meeting, like the people that want to watch Mulan will pay $30 to see Mulan. Okay,
people will pay $30 just to quiet their kids down for an hour.
Which, to your point about Mulan, is a little bit more of a head scratcher. I think it's just because it's Disney. But what other, like, is releasing Mulan on the platform seems like that's just what they should have done. You know, that's the value of having Disney Plus is you get an exclusive movie once in a while.
Yeah, I mean, why wouldn't
But
they?
to make us pay for it, you know, behind a paywall to begin with is just bizarre.
And then you also have films that you don't want to watch in a theater, but by the time it comes out on DVD, you kind of forget about it. And we're just talking about like the garbage movies that you just spend a night watching and never think about again. Because if it wasn't for those movies, like I would not want to go to the theater to watch Kissing Booth. But I'll put on Kissing Booth 2 back to back at home just for that background clatter of streaming, you know? And I would never watch the movie in a theater, but the fact that it's at home, I'll partially listen to it while playing Apex in the background.
I think calling Kissing Booth 2 background noise is overly generous.
And this is coming from a Kissing Booth fan. And another great point to not going into theaters, no annoying people in the theater to ruin your experience if you're watching at home. I don't know about you, dude, but some of these cheapo theaters I go to will have the absolute worst crowds to the point where I wish I could get my money back for the movie's over.
So I remember at TIFF, the last TIFF, I went to see this movie, The Painted Bird, super like depressing World War II, like come and see style, like depressing movie. And I was like, okay, like I'm ready for this. And this woman comes and sits beside me and has the most perfume on. And so the whole movie, I'm just like smelling this waft of perfume. And the same thing happened today at Tenet, but we moved down. It's like, do not wear excessive amounts of like cologne or anything like that to a movie. It's like such poor etiquette.
There is a definite movie etiquette where it's like, if I smell you eating a Big Mac, dude, I will throw a handful
Straight
of popcorn.
up, I would prefer you eating a full plate of nachos that you brought in than like to have too much cologne on.
What do we think is the best part about watching things at home? Are you kind of a pauser? When you watch things like with your kids, I'm sure there's a lot of pausing going around, but when you're watching something by yourself, are you kind of put the phone away, a little text here and there? Like, what do you like about it?
No, I'm a kind of a dick when it comes to watching movies. I want the lights off. I want to mimic the theater as much as I possibly can. So if someone has to go to the bathroom and I have to pause it, I'm a little bit, like, come on.
Use the P app, okay? I'm not pausing. You better figure out yourself.
Yeah. I have a strict no devices while we're watching. I want everybody to be watching the movie together, just so we can, have little asides and laugh and have enjoyment out of it.
That's the least dickish thing I've ever heard. All right. That is, you could charge tickets in your living room with how seriously you take it.
I've actually thought about that for a while too. Like maybe I set up an actual theater set, because I have an unfinished basement, so I can kind of just do whatever. Once the virus is all gone, and then just start.
You're gonna a knock on your door from Mickey Mouse, and he's gonna just beat you up, man. If you don't get the rights to that.
Oh, hi.
I mean, it really just comes down to how you watch your movies at home. I mean, if you have a half decent setup, you don't have to have a $10,000 setup to kind of get a good viewing experience at home. I mean, a big screen TV will do more than fine.
No, like I've got like a 32-inch monitor that I watch all my movies on at home, and the thing is, like, I'm watching 1 or 2 movies every day, and so it's like you're not getting that level of content at the movies. Like, I'm gonna have to watch stuff at home, and I can pretty much find anything I want on the internet. Like I can watch whatever, and there's this whole breadth of content for me, and that's the leg up that the internet will always have. Whereas I have to go to like a retrospective or something like that at a theater to see these old films that I've never seen projected, which is a huge downside, is kind of like just the limits of what can be shown in theaters.
Yeah. And that does make it a little bit more special too when you do see these things in theaters and you go, you know what, I'm really glad, even though we didn't like Tenet, that we went to that theater and watched that movie, because I'm always happier just going to the movies and watching something, no matter what. I mean, even like the times we are in right now, you and I love movies so much that, we'll go see Bill and Ted, and we'll go see Tenet, and we'll go see whatever else they're going to put out in theaters, because we just freaking love going to it so much that there's no replacement.
It's the event of it. It's going to the movie, the anticipation. It's leaving the movie after, talking about it. It's this whole like chunk of time. Whereas when I'm at home, I watch a movie and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna make a sandwich.
It's the ending of the Truman Show. Well, what else is on?
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, sure, the convenience of watching stuff at home will be fantastic. And the fact that we can get things now right away, we don't have to wait, 8 months anymore for something to come out on VHS after it was in theaters. But there's just nothing that'll ever trump the movies. I just don't think so.
I know. I don't want this to turn into another, Hollywood blockbuster video scenario where we're just nostalgic about the good old days of going to rent a movie. Yeah. But it might end up going that way eventually.
Well, hopefully not. Adam, thank you so much for coming on and doing the podcast. Where can the people find you?
Yeah, this was a ton of fun. You can find me at Adam Does Movies on YouTube. I have a second channel that's just Adam Ollinger. It's a little bit more crass and more parody, satirical type stuff. Still very, I don't go into politics or religion or any of that stuff. I like to keep it fun and engaging for everybody as much as I possibly can. But Adam Does Movies is the main house.
Awesome. You can find Adam there and watching movies at home, and you can find me watching movies at the theater trying to understand Tenet.
watch.
Either way, no matter what we use to watch the movies, we freaking love these movies. I mean, we didn't like Tenet. That's okay, because it was still freaking fun to see it in the theater with the sound shaking our seats with how loud it was getting and craning your neck to see the full frame. Like, I will never get tired of the movie-going experience because it's one of the only things that we're doing the exact same way they've done it since like the 20s. You go to a theater, someone turns on a projection, and you sit down and you watch it. It's the exact same.
It's one of the only forms of art, for me anyway, that's like totally washes over you and it just takes hold of you in no other way that no other medium can.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, what do we think? Do you think it's worth seeing some movies you want to see in theaters? Maybe movies you like, maybe movies you know that are going to be larger than life. You got to see these action set pieces, or you just stay at home for the night and order a pizza.
If I can see it in a theater, I'm gonna go see it in a theater.
Yeah, I
But
think me too.
that's not always the case.
Anytime you want to watch a VOD, my couch is always open for you.
Keep a spot warm for me.
Thank you so much for doing the show, Connor. Where can the people find you online?
They can find me at _Connor Reeves on Instagram or Connor_Reeves on Twitter. I only watch movies on my iPod Touch that's preloaded with Flubber and Jaws 4.
Thank you so much for checking out the podcast. Leave a like and subscribe, and let us know whether you prefer going to the movies or staying at home and watching them. I only watch movies on my Viewmaster one frame at a time.